Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Jacqui Pruet. Jacqui, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Jacqui, you kind of thought up something and did it. And I wanted to explore that with you because I just love stories of innovation. And part of it is you saw a market opportunity, part of it is you saw a market need, part of it was you wanted to do it. And we're going to explore kind of all of those things. So, why don't, before we get started, introduce yourself to the audience.
Howdy, I'm Jacqui Pruet, and I am here in amazing Austin, Texas. And I'm just thrilled to be here today.
So, what is ACE?
Oh, ACE is my baby. ACE stands for Austin Compliance and Ethics Professionals, ACE.
What sparked its creation?
I had been very active on LinkedIn. I had been very engaged in networking online, and I kept trying to find. I'd seen these other networking groups. I'd seen soccer that Christy was running out in California. I had heard about a massive 400 person group in Houston, but that was just a little bit far for me here in Austin. And there just wasn't anything here in Austin. And we're the capital of Texas. Where were my people at? And I wanted something here in the state capital.
So tell us about your passion around compliance and ethics.
So I had been a state regulator. I was relatively new to being in the for-profit side of things. And I wanted to learn. I wanted to grow. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to learn more about my profession. And I've been networking with people literally all over the world. I had Christy and I had amazing people like my friend Stefan all the way over in Saudi Arabia, who has his own networking group. And I was seeing all these amazing people online, and I was meeting people virtually here in Austin, but we just didn't have a place to meet up here. And that just seemed kind of silly. And I was doing these amazing things that I called my compliance coffees. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I would talk about them because I was encouraging people. I wanted to learn and I wanted that community because I do think ethics and compliance, I'm a huge nerd. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting. And I do see ethics and compliance as the relationship department if we're doing it right. And I wanted to develop those relationships in person.
Jacqui, it's one thing to come up with an idea, it's another thing to execute that idea, especially when you have limited to no resources. So tell us about the execution of ACE and how you really just thought it up, but more importantly, did it.
Well, I would say that's the story of ethics and compliance, isn't it? Isn't that how it feels in every ethics and compliance department? I've never heard of a well-funded one. Have you? If you go to any of these conferences, if you do any networking, the number one refrain I hear is, gosh, I have no funding. And I feel like that was true of this. There was no networking group here in Austin. I wanted it. And if you know me, if I want to do something, gosh darn it, I'm gonna do it. And that's also how I approach work. You can't just sit there and say, gosh darn it, I want something. If you're going to be a leader, if you're going to get something done, it's up to you to do it. And that's kind of what I do for ethics and compliance departments. If you know about me, I'm not a lawyer. That's not my background. I'm a strategist. And if you're going to sit around and wait for someone to hand you money and ethics and compliance in particular, you're going to be waiting for quite some time. But here's the thing, that's not just ethics and compliance. That's any department. I've never heard of a department out there where they're like, you know what? I like them. Let me give them some money. I don't think that department exists. Maybe in AI, but not here. And so, if you want something done, if you're a leader, it's up to you to figure out how to make it happen. And I worked for the state, I worked in banking my entire career. I have never been handed a huge budget. And so I kind of specialize in having a toothpick, maybe some bubble gum, and getting us to the moon. And so in this case, I was like, you know what? I have no resources. I want something. Let's make it happen.
So, what is high trust leadership communities?
You know, my jobs have always been to work with the elite leadership. My job, what I see myself as, I'm the fulcrum, I'm the safe harbor. My job is to work with executives, at my last job. Prior to that, I worked with the elite police forces of Texas, their elite leadership within the elite police forces. And my job is really to be that trusted advisor, that strategist that brings everyone together. And so my job is to figure out how to make a safe space for leaders to be able to make those decisions they need to make, to be in that safe space where they could release and then come together. And a lot of times they don't get that. A lot of times leaders are constantly under pressure. They're constantly being asked things of them. Back to that point, I've never heard of a single area where they're just throwing money at them. In ethics and compliance, the constant refrain is, I don't have enough money. There's very few areas where they're throwing money at you. And if you're an elite leader, the number one thing the experience is people are asking things of them. And that's true in ethics and compliance. People are constantly asking things of us. And so in ACE, what we are is a safe space for elite leaders to come together and have that safe space to talk to one another, to have that place where we come together and figure out what it means to be an elite leader in this really hard line of work, and share and release and go, oh, and not worry about vendors coming after us, and not worry about people needing something from us, and not worry about these other things. And then you have a few drinks, you have a few good bites of good food, you're in a cool space, you're amongst peers. And then after you've released a little, then you have some good conversation, and all of a sudden the ideas start flowing, because that's where real idea exchange happens. It doesn't happen when you're being asked a million things of one another. It happens when you have a chance to be yourself.
So, why do you believe that confidentiality and trust are literally non negotiable for high performing leaders?
Because how else are you going to be able to exchange those ideas? I mean, think about it. If you're walking into a room where someone is asking something of you, your guard is up. If you're walking into a room of peers, that's where you get to have trust. And so that's kind of what I do, is I create safe spaces for leaders to be able to have that. And you have to earn that. You don't get just everyone wants that, but you don't just get that. You have to earn it. It's about creating trust. Trust is something you have to earn. And to your point, you asked me earlier, how did I do this with zero resources? You earn trust, you build relationships. And that's not something you just go, okay, hey, I'm here, give me your trust. And people go, oh, okay, here's trust. And that's the core of ethics and compliance. If you go in at it and you litigate people to death, that's not trust. If you go in and you beat people down and you contract them to death, that's not trust. But if you go in and you say, here's what I'm offering, let's build a relationship step by step, and you show them it, that's how you earn trust. And with ACE, what I did was I said, you know what? I don't want 400 people there. I started, and my first meeting, I think there was 7 people there. And at my third meeting, there was 13 people there. But by having only one vendor, my sponsor, that's the only vendor that gets to be there, is this person who's sponsoring it. By having only elite sponsors, it allows, and by only allowing director levels and above. So now you know that there are people from credible organizations. And I did it by reaching out to the people on LinkedIn who I'd been networking with. I said, hey, you know what? I think we should meet in person. I only want you for 2 hours on a Thursday. We're not having a sit down dinner. We're going to go to places I want to go to, places you want to go to. It's a 2-hour commitment. We're going to start with an open bar. We're going to have light bites. And then we're going to shift to, instead of having a speaker speak at you, which you were one of my gracious hosts, the way that it works, it's going to be a guided conversation, because it's all going to be director levels and above. And I never share my guest lists, but because these people have openly posted about events after they've happened, I don't mind saying this. We've had director level people from Meta, TikTok, Tesla, Whole Foods show up to this. And that was by my 3rd and 4th events. And we only meet quarterly. So it's a very light lift. You get 45 minutes of an open bar, about 45 minutes of guided conversation where you have about 13 to 20 people in the room max. They're all director level and above. And by my fourth one, we had chief compliance officers coming to this. We had the chief compliance officer. She was so gracious to share one of our posts. So I'm not sharing anything out from Tupperware. Like, these are amazing minds. So instead of talking at them, it's like a Knights of a Round Table thing where they're talking. And then you have networking at the end. And you show them how to share their LinkedIn profiles, you show them how to connect. And that's where like the real magic happens, is that second round of networking. Because now everyone knows each other. They've shared thoughts, they've shared communication, it's amazing. And I'm very guarded with my guest list. I don't let anyone else have it. That vendor never gets to have it. They get to be in the room with these elite people, but it's up to them to make that network connection. They have to talk to them. They're not ever allowed to pitch. They just get to talk to them like another person, and they have to prove to me that they can talk like another compliance professional. So that's the secret sauce of ACE. I just told you it all, but now it's up to another person to go out there and to be as protective of their guest list, to really work with their vendor to make sure they understand you never get that guest list. It's up to you to make a relationship, And it's been spectacular. The vendors have loved it. Every single vendor who's worked with me, who's gotten to host, has loved it. And they've raved and they've referred me to other vendors. So it's been wonderful for everyone involved.
Let me change the focus a little bit, because this next series of questions is about something I'm incredibly passionate about. And it's the following. Effective compliance and ethics equates to greater business efficiency, equates to greater profitability or greater ROI. And you see
Absolutely.
ethics as a driver of revenue and relationships. I'd like to maybe explore that with you. Why do you believe that revenue generating ecosystems can help a company become more profitable or have greater ROI?
I'm deeply passionate about this. This is something I'm a huge champion of, and I think that has been missed. And this is something, when I work with a company, I, as a strategist, really push. And I think it comes back to that idea about relationships. So when you focus on a reactive stance, when you're only looking at investigations, when you're only looking at audit, you're not getting what you need to out of ethics and compliance. But really, it should be about a relationships and a strategy-based focus. And that's where you get the revenue. And it's about building trust, and it's about dealing with the uncertainty aspects that a lot of people are missing, because that's really where ethics and compliance help a company thrive. Ethics and compliance. So a great example, let's use a case here. The SEC. The SEC initially, under the Biden administration, had a very aggressive stance where it came to ethics and compliance, and they were leading. And initially they were dictating policy. And then all of a sudden they took a very different pivot where they were allowing industry to come to the table. And now they're hosting these amazing roundtables where they're allowing industry to come forward and help them dictate what the policy is. That's ethics and compliance, y'all. That's us. That is our chance. And that's where I get really passionate. I'm a strategist. I'm a former regulator. I wrote policy like this. That's us. This is our moment. And that is revenue. That is us getting to dictate the future. That is us getting to help with uncertainty. That is us getting to decide where industry stands with regulatory policy for industry. Woo! I find that very sexy.
Very cool. Very cool. Let's just keep exploring that then, because what's the alignment between innovation, governance, and compliance leading to this strategic advantage?
I mean, so there's so many different areas. We also have AI, which is this amazing area that's growing. We have a lot of interesting things happening, especially where that's emerging. And if we're being really smart about it, I always like to say, and I have a very interesting talk coming out pretty soon with Nick Gallo, where we explore this a little bit more, but this is where we should be proactive, because what happens with government is we only get regulated if we mess up as industry. Government isn't naturally a reactive thing. And so if we do this right, ethics and compliance should be proactive. And if we're doing this correctly with a strategy in mind, we are proactive. And we get to dictate where all this goes, which I find that very exciting. And that can all be very positive and very appealing to investors. It appeals to our executives. We get to partner with marketing. And all of these things help drive revenue for our companies because we put us in a very strong and strategic place towards stakeholders. I find that all very engaging.
So let's talk about the support that you think leaders need during regulatory shifts, or heck, let's just say 2025, because it cannot be any more chaotic than this year in terms of the pace of change.
So, number one thing I always like to say is the one certain thing is uncertainty. If you are trying to tame the future, if you are trying to control the future, you're already losing. The number one thing you need to do is embrace uncertainty. Uncertainty is the one thing you need to be ready for. And if you can work together as a team, if you can embrace relationships, and if you can work together and say, you know what, we can't predict what's coming, but what we can do is work together to be a strong team. And here's how we can work together to make sure that we are in alignment together. That's where you know you're going to be strong.
Jacqui, you've already mentioned that you're not a lawyer, but you do advise on legal strategy and really
Absolutely.
wanted to explore that in conjunction with behavioral science to why you think this gives you a really unique perspective.
One of the members of ACE is Joe Burke. He's the former chief compliance officer of Dell. He built their compliance department for them. He's also a former professor at Fordham University. He has a book coming out, so look out for that. He has a very interesting perspective about this that he and I are in total alignment on. If you know what's happening in American universities, they're starting to teach ethics and compliance in business school as a separate track. This is coming. And with the advancements in AI, it's only going to expedite this ever more. AI and legal, just like HR and legal, just like IT, it's about to start growing up, y'all. Originally, ethics and compliance had to be under there. It had to be under HR. But as it matures, we're going to start seeing it breaking apart more and more. And a really healthy way for it to be is a check and balance, just like HR and legal are a check and balance. When you look at them as two different things, they really should have this check and balance to be more effective. And I think what you're going to start seeing is having the strategy piece become more and more important, especially as AI advances, because AI is about to be able, within 3 to 5, 10 at most years, is going to be able to do a lot of the things that we've been seeing being done by humans. And so I think when you look at the behavior modification component, especially from the regulatory standpoint, which they are already asking for, they're getting clearer and clearer about this. Yes, we understand you need to have audit, you need to have investigations, but you also need to have the data analysis, and you really need to have the behavior modification component. You need to have all three. Most only have the first. Some sort of have the second. Almost none have the third. You need to show how your company is addressing these things in the long term. How are you addressing the changes? How are you growing your company? And what are you doing for the long-term health of your company? And so that's where people like me come in, where we're addressing it before it happens. And that's not like future science. It's like saying, we see these patterns, we see what's happened. Now, what are we doing to proactively address them?
You may have actually proactively answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I want you to tie it directly to the question, which is how do you believe your regulatory background has helped you in your, or enforcement background has helped you in your compliance career? For instance, I've never been a regulator or a prosecutor. I've always worked on the civil side of things. So I have that sort of in my background and in my head. But what's into your background in your head is different. So what does that bring you to you, and what do you bring to the table as a compliance professional?
So I do look at it differently. One of the things that, we always laugh about, I wrote an article a little bit ago about the 2004 DOJ guidance update. I actually wrote it prior to the update coming out. I wrote it about the 2003 update. I submitted it to Corporate Compliance Insights to my editor, Jennifer. she was working on something. She was at the SEC conference, and so she didn't get to it. And then boom, they dropped the update for 2004, and I had correctly anticipated every single update they made. She can verify all of this to be accurate. I literally made 3 or 4 tense updates, and we updated the link, and then we went live with it. And the reason I was able to do all this was I understood the 2003 one. To me, I got it the first time because I speak regulator fluently. I was really thrilled when Meredith asked me to go out to the Opal AI conference recently and talk about the SEC AI regulations. And I said to her, I'm not a federal regulator. She goes, yeah, but I know what you did with the DOJ, and we would like you to do this with the SEC. And I was able to because I speak regulator fluently. I used to write laws for the state of Texas, and I understand how regulators think. I understand how they react. And I was talking about this with Nick Gallo. The government is reactionary. It reacts to what you force it to do, ultimately. And when you look at regulations, I look at it through a regulator's lens. I don't look at it through a lawyer's lens. So I guess I just read it differently than lawyers do ultimately. And I look at it as a behaviorist because before I was a regulator, the reason I didn't apply for that job, I was tapped. I used to be a behaviorist and a trainer for the state of Texas with the elite police forces of Texas. And I was asked to do that job because I had earned the trust of the people I had been working with, both the law enforcement agents and as well as the regulators, because all of the courses I was teaching were being regulated by the state. And so I had to submit those courses to the place I eventually worked for.
Jacqui, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out any more information about ACE, what would be the best place for them to go or the best way for them to do?
You can reach me at jacqui.pruet@gmail.com, jacqui.pruet@gmail.com, or at my LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you on my LinkedIn. This has been so amazing. I see myself as a leader that is really ultimately a strategist that helps other leaders, because if you pay attention, ACE isn't about me. I've never been a speaker there. It's really a place where I help other leaders shine. And that's kind of what I do for companies. I help other leaders achieve. And I'd love to do that for you.
Well, thank you very much. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Me too.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.